Alright guys, so let's talk about the China-EU summit. Now this meeting ended early and boy was it a total disaster. Now at the end of the day, the only real agreement was the statement on climate change and tells you everything that you need to know. The real agenda is about trade and Europe is desperate to survive in this new world order. And frankly, their options are running thin and is collapsing fast. Now on one hand, they are facing the Chinese industrial machine, and thanks to the sanctions, they have given up cheap Russian commodities. And these are big supplies that are flowing into the Chinese economy at 20 to even 30% discount in many cases. Now, from 2027, Russia is going to supply China with an additional 10 billion cubic meters of gas from Sakhalin Island. Now, this is separate from the Power of Siberia pipeline that is providing nearly 40 billion cubic meters of natural gas this year. So you can imagine the amount of savings Chinese industries are enjoying, not just in energy, but when it comes to inputs for chemicals and plastics as well. Now, natural gas is a precursor raw material for producing these products, and thanks to ideology, Europe gave up a huge manufacturing advantage they used to have. But this is what the EU clung to during the summit. They kept going against Einstein's definition of insanity. They kept doubling down on a failed strategy of trying to pressure China. It just won't work. Now, von der Leyen is still playing the same script from 2023 and 2024. As our cooperation has deepened, so have the imbalances. Is it really China's fault? It's because EU production is no longer competitive. And when you swap away Russian energy for US LNG, bad things tend to happen. The EU Council head also called for China to pressure Russia to tell Putin to stop the conflict with Ukraine. Well, we all know that isn't going to happen. This mess will play out however it's going to play out. And here's the crazy part. Von der Leyen wants to rebalance trading relations with China, and the onus is with Beijing to come out with real solutions. And this is where Europe really lost me. What do they actually expect? What do they want? China to import X amount of EU goods despite the higher prices, or China to give a deep discount on their exports to Europe. Now, doesn't that go against free trade? And from the onset, we could tell the Chinese didn't really take the meeting seriously. Just look at how China ushered in the commission. They stuffed all of them into a bus. Von der Leyen had to come out from the bus walking without a proper welcome delegation. And if we know anything about the Chinese, optics are very powerful. When the Saudis and the Russians visited, it was 180, big pomp and grandeur, with at least the premier greeting them. This is complete night and day. EU industries today are just not competitive anymore, and it all stems from the fundamental problem of cutting away Russian commodities. High dependence on US markets is definitely a big problem, but if EU manufacturing was robust, it wouldn't be that much of an issue, would it? They can divert production away to other markets like Asia. But it's just not happening. Now, since 2022, the trade deficit between Europe and China has been exploding. Almost hit $400 billion 3 years back. Now, history is going to repeat itself in 2025 this year. The deficit in the first half is already beyond 170 billion. Now, 3 years back, it was the energy crisis. Today, it's the trade war with Trump that's forcing Europe to buy more from China. It's not complex at all. If they don't buy more Chinese inputs, their cost of production won't be competitive enough. Plus, Europe needs a lot of rare earths and components from the Chinese market. So it's virtually impossible for the trade deficit to come down. It will cripple Europe at a faster rate. So what can be done? This is something that we have said for years. The only viable route for Europe is to make peace with the Russians, or at least acknowledge they still need cheap energy. And it doesn't matter if you like Putin or not, because if you don't do it, your entire industrial base will lose ground to both the Chinese and the Americans. Both powers, they're gonna hollow out your economy. And remember that China has a lot of money to play with, over $1 trillion in trade surplus, and they can borrow money at dirt cheap rates. So capital isn't a problem for them. Now we can see this in China's FDI to Europe in 2024. It reached $10 billion last year, a 47% increase from the previous year. But the big boys, Germany, France, and the UK, saw their share of Chinese money drop. Now, more money percentage-wise went to Hungary, which really begs the question why. Now, sure, relations with Orban are better, that's for sure, but the Chinese are practical people. Hungary still gets their energy from Russia and is part of the EU. So China can get the best of both worlds. They can enjoy cheaper production and still sell into the common market. There's no complex equation or solution I can really give to solve Europe's problem. They need to think more practically and get away from their own Arthurian legend. The trade war itself should be a big wake up call.
China is laughing. China is laughing at you. Russia is laughing. India is laughing. You know why? Because of your eco madness, because of your eco God. We are responsible for 7% of pollution of the globe, when China is responsible for 30%, and Madame von der Leyen wants to save the planet with our money.
Now, while the EU is spinning in circles, a key industry in the US is circling the toilet, and it's none other than the farming industry. And let's be frank, we all saw this one coming a mile away. Now, thanks to the tariff war, input costs for US farms are flying to the moon. This is really tragic, a tragic story of how everything is just backfiring in real time. US tariffs, low crop prices, and high interest rates are pushing US small farm bankruptcies to 5-year high. It shouldn't be surprising to anyone with a surface understanding of what's going on. The tariff effects are real. US farmers are forced to pay more for their machinery. All the combine harvesters or the mechanical plows are facing punitive tariffs. You either have to pay 30% above the price tag to bring in Chinese imports or pay much more buying gear from John Deere or Caterpillar. Either option is painful because you have to pass the additional cost down to the consumer. Alright guys, so this is an invitation to everyone. If you want to learn about the world of gold, plus get to meet me in person, we have an event in Singapore on September the 17th that you don't want to miss. It's going to be an awesome wine and cheese night with good food and even better conversations. Now, I'm working with Indigo Precious Metals to bring physical meetups to you, and it's something I'm very excited about. Now is the time. So talk with gold experts, chat about investing, and banter with me about absolutely anything on your mind. So come along for a night of fun, great bites, and truth bombs. We can accommodate up to 30 plus people, so don't wait and RSVP soon. Details are in the link below. Join us at the event, and once again, it's September the 17th from 6 p.m. So get on board, I'll see you very soon in person, and let's have a good time. Now, contrary to what Besson or Trump is saying, US consumers are now forced to choose. It's a battle between food, rent, utilities, and essential purchases like cars, which means more families will have to scheme on eating out, so food demand goes down. And there are big financial issues plaguing the entire industry as well. Now, this is a very heavily subsidized sector. Many people don't understand just how much. Almost $10 billion in direct subsidies to US farmers for commodity crops like corn and soybean. Not forgetting the USDA issuing $2 billion in safety net programs and assistance programs that provide $10 billion in payments. So in total, we are looking at around $20 billion, which brings us to a big question. Can Donald Trump continue to provide more subsidies to farmers? Well, he has no choice, right? Either he piles more money on the national debt or he watch US farmers just implode. Now, better to kick the can down the road. It's the same story year after year, decade after decade. As if that isn't enough, Trump's trade war with China is making things much tougher for America. And the data is undeniable, guys. We are not cooking up stories here. And this is how urgent the situation is today. US small farm bankruptcies surged to 173 in the first half of 2025, and this is more than double the collapse in 2023. And why is this happening? Because Trump has pissed off China, causing Beijing their demand to tank. The Chinese consumer, they are buying more food but not from America. They are buying soybeans to pork from BRICS members like Brazil. The US is not the only food producer in the world. And as a result, US farm debt is projected to go well over $560 billion this year. So can this situation U-turn? Not until the trade war reverses and reverses soon. But let's work on the assumption that it doesn't. Now, what does it mean for the US economy as a whole? The only solution left is to lower rates at the cost of higher inflation. And we are talking about higher, sustained, and structural inflation for the foreseeable future. There's really no other option left. And that's why Besant and Trump, they're trying to tag team Powell. They're trying to pin him down for the 3 count. They want rates to drop by at least 3% to continue this song and dance. Trump himself just revealed the truth through all his contradictions. Despite preferring a strong dollar, he knows a weaker dollar is necessary for his reshoring plan. That you can't sell anything with a stronger currency, especially when the tariffs are driving your own costs up. You need a weaker dollar, and manufacturers like Caterpillar need to sell stuff. Now, understand this is the horrible state of US exports. Supply chains and ecosystems are fractured to the point you need to paper over the problem with a weaker currency. It's like you're on a constant diet of Domino's Pizza and McDonald's, and that you believe swapping your McFlurry for apple pie is the healthier way to go. And because of the trade war, he's now caught in a devaluation game with other major export economies like China. Even Japan is a threat as well.
So I will never say I like a low currency, but you remember the battles I had with the yuan, with China and with Japan, Japan being the yen. They always wanted a weak currency. They're trying to get a weak currency now. Now, it doesn't sound good, but you make a hell of a lot more money with a weaker dollar. Not a weak dollar, but a weaker dollar than you do with a strong dollar.
And there are serious effects to a weaker dollar that Trump is still discounting because the US does not have a self-sufficient manufacturing base yet. Input costs are going to fly up. So the big question is if the falling dollar will boost exports more than production prices going up. And this is the balancing act that I believe will utterly fail. The deck is stacked against Trump. 51% of goods imported into the US are intermediate goods, and this can be chemicals, electricals, and plastics, inputs needed to make the end product. Now, steel and aluminum are intermediate goods, and they are subjected to over 30% tariffs. So imagine if the dollar falls by 10%, the cost of making stuff in the US will rise. So how much does the dollar have to fall to truly offset the tariffs? Will it have to drop by another 20 or 30%? And we are being deadly serious here if Trump wants to use the currency as a leverage point. And we are all assuming that the world is still happy buying US goods. So no, the US can't afford to use the reserve currency to boost exports without big blowback effects. And when Trump speaks, it's a mixture of reality, imagination, and wishful thinking. Now, the trick is trying to discern which is which, but I think on this channel we are getting better and better at sieving out the BS. And let's look at the consequences of the US dollar collapsing on how foreign governments are allocating their reserves, and it's really unambiguous. In 2024 and 2025, the amount of gold holdings in central banks flew to the moon. It has gone from nearly 15% to nearly 25% of total reserves, which is a big jump considering everything. And where is that money coming from? Now, a big part is dollars not going into treasury bonds, it's instead heading towards gold bullion. Now, imagine a scenario where the dollar falls by another 5 to 10%. Sure, US exports might benefit somewhat, but the American financial system is going to get clobbered. So things aren't that easy. Just because Trump wants a weaker dollar doesn't mean he can get it without a tremendous cost. But let me know what you think. Can Europe escape the mess they are in? And is Trump really going to get his weaker dollar soon? Let me know in the comments below. Stay safe. Be sure to smash the like button and subscribe as we navigate through these crazy times.